Ready to tell them what they're going to be when they grow up. But so welcome. We're not going to go through all of the students' names just now. We went through everyone else's name, but we're just going to put y'all in the Xavier bag, and then slowly you can tell us as we go where you're from. All right. So anyway, what I was getting ready to do is just talk very briefly about how we established this and what we're trying to do. And for the students, I'm Jerry Johnson. I'm a good friend of Michael Williams, Dr. Williams, and who puts these programs together for the students, and Brother Bright. So basically here, what happened is I came, like probably a lot of you all, with my red, black, and green flag and Pan-Africanist proclivities to Ghana in actually '94. And then I was, back and forth to different West African countries. But when I finally moved here at the end of 2003, I moved close to the University of Legon because, we wanted to do our study. And I had all these books and I have all these videos, and you know how it is. And so we wanted to really interact with the students and talk about the future of Africa, Pan-Africanism, revolution, whatever else we wanted to talk about. I spent on and off the first couple of years, 2 or 3 years, dealing mostly with the students, but I also realized that these things go off when you don't want them to, but when you want them to, they don't do anything. But what I realized that by the time you get to college age, which is the Legon students, which is the area I was around mostly, this propaganda and everything in the West is better, and everything is, so the students aren't thinking so much about what's going to happen in Africa. They're thinking, how are they going to get to Xavier, or somewhere, So I realized, okay, I need to talk to younger students. So I was out here already in and out, although I was renting near the university. So I started going to the students in all of these areas, going down to the elementary school, that level, just getting as young as I can, even junior high school. And that was a little more fruitful because the children are a little bit more open. Of course, this is before social media took off too, so you can kind of get their attention and hold it. And but there's 1 million villages out here, which means there's 1 million schools. I mean, they're everywhere. And so that got to be a little cumbersome after a few years. So I said, I have the space. So I said I would just plaster one of these walls and just put up all of these African ancestral figures. And then once I do that, then I'll just bring the students on field trips. Save me a lot of time and energy, and also tends that they're more attentive when they're out of school or out of class, on the bus. They have to behave a little bit. So that's what we started doing. That's been, to me, more impactful because I see them much younger, and it's you can just accommodate a lot more schools, a lot more students than just with the same amount of energy. So that's what we've been doing, about 8 years of that. So, and that's what it was. We're building. We've been working for 5 years. We'll show you when we get down there, a library and also a area for students and meetings and films and everything else. So we're trying to make something available to the community, not just local, but Tema, Accra, have our different programs. And I think it's important to try to put your money together to build something tangible people can see, feel, and use. And so we're trying to stay with that kind of orientation. So that's basically why I'm in Africa, because I'm a Garveyite. Like I'm sure a lot of you are.
Yes, we are.
And short means to me that we have to build something of consequence on the African continent. Be sure we are of consequence everywhere. Garvey used to say, a strong man is strong everywhere. Our problem right now is we don't have a single nation anywhere in the world that has the power to project, that has the power to defend, that has the power of leverage. So things happen to us, Atlanta and LA and Kingston and everywhere else, and there's really nowhere we can point to and say, hey, we need some assistance, or just say, hey, we're part of this powerful sovereign entity somewhere. So this is what we have to build. You read Philosophies and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. makes a lot of these things clear. So
Yes, it does.
rather than to just study it forever, we're trying to bring some of that to concrete fruition. So that's the mission. That's why we're here, and we're just doing the thing, you know. So that's it in a nutshell. Obviously, there's a lot more to be said about what we do, the details of what we do, and also Ghana. Of course, we just met. You know, a lot of people have been traveling and going to Burkina, so we've been meeting back and forth with different people who've traveled, and of course, everyone's talking about ideas of confederation and these kind of things in Africa, which we all think have a lot of potential. So, but the main thing with the students, I always say, the small ones, we're trying to create the Africans we need to solve the problems we have. You know, there's no sense talking about it and you're not preparing anybody to do it. If you're not preparing anyone to do it, it's not going to happen. And just because you're not socializing your children, don't mean they're not being socialized. They're being socialized for the status quo.
There you go. Get 'em.
We know how far that's gotten us. So it's time for us to take control of that process and be intentional about it. So that's kind of nutshell. We can take some questions.
Yes, come on, get him some hard questions. This is a brother that dedicated his life to this movement, and some of us are serious about it. So I always try to tell people, like, look at people's works and not their mouth and talk, because nowadays you could just get on YouTube and you can just say anything.
And don't we? And not only
Okay.
can you say anything, AI can say it for you. So I'm looking at some of this stuff and I'm like, you know,
So-
especially things like have to do with Burkina Faso. You know, you see somebody on there talking and they'll say, and Brakuna, and then the next time they say Burkina, and then Barkina. Now, wait a minute, hold it. How does the same person pronounce it 6 different ways? That's how you know it's AI. The problem is they're getting better at it, you know.
Yeah, they learn behaviors.
Pretty soon you don't know who you're listening to.
I'm sorry, Elder.
Yes, sir.
Some of us may not be informed necessarily on what actually is going on in Burkina Faso. Would you be able to enlighten some of the students on necessarily what's going on there politically and why it's so important?
Beautiful question, brother. Yes,
Let
I
me
love
ask
it.
the
I love
students.
it.
I'll start with the students. Let me ask the students, how many of you are a little bit familiar with what's going on in Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, what they're trying to do? Some of y'all have some familiarity with it. Okay, that's good. Basically, what's going on is they are trying to confederate, which are trying to erase some borders between at least those three. You know, we talk about African borders having to be erased. We talk about this African unity as one unit, but the truth is this has to happen, you know, 1, 2, 3 states at a time. You know, the people in Kenya and the people in Senegal aren't going to all wake up tomorrow and say we're a nation. You know, I mean, that would be nice, but that's not realistic. So what we're looking at is, you know, in this particular case, you have Ghana, you have Burkina Faso, you have Mali, and you have Niger, and the three of them have recently pulled away from the French, and of course there's a long legacy of criminal exploitation, you know, and as far as that goes, what's been going on with France and the French and the money they've been making from our nations for all these years and all of that.
But for clarity, did they break away from ECOWAS or did they not?
Yeah, and so what's happened is West Africa has a community called ECOWAS. It was supposed to be Economic Community of West African States, but you know it hasn't produced or functioned or brought much tangible benefit to anyone for the years and years they've been in existence. Well, Burkina, Mali, and Niger were also part of ECOWAS, but for their own reasons, they ended up struggling against quote-unquote terrorists in the north, and then of course we don't know. Of course, we have our suspicions about who's supporting all of this terrorism that they're having to deal with. But the bottom line is they realize, okay, let's take this chance. Let's remove the French from our society, from our economy, to the extent possible. And the three of them are contiguous. I mean, they're next to each other. That means they could eliminate the borders between each other. And then they start trying to look and see what can they do as a group, and how can they confederate, how can they, you know, maximize. Of course, they all have gold, uranium, all of these things that, of course, they get almost nothing out of. And so this is a movement, and it's embryonic, and then that's when it's really at its most vulnerable stage. And so for us who've been watching these things over the years, we know this is an extremely fragile situation. And but for a lot of people, it's becoming a point of motivation for young people, different parts of the world, different parts of Africa. You know, people, they're gonna make mistakes along the way. You can't help it. But the question really is this a model that can work with these states trying to come together and be big enough to begin to have some level of sovereignty and develop a polity of their own making, as opposed to Berlin Conference drawing these lines all across Africa 100 years ago. So anything is probably better than that. Now, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, we're trying to have a tripartite agreement. I guess that's probably been about 10 years ago. It's a similar situation, but that was broken up because no one could afford to let that really happen too, because not only have resources, they have access to the sea, they have a whole lot of things that, you know, strategic points that global powers are all coveting. So unfortunately that wasn't able to gel the way it would have been nice to see it. But the point is, these kind of initiatives are starting, and if they start working and start bearing fruit, they'll encourage other people to do it. And that's the danger for the outsiders looking at these initiatives. And I don't care outside, I don't care where they're from. Nobody wants to see Africans develop enough power and sovereignty to not cut them a good deal. You know, because everybody's like, oh, these guys are screwing you, but you don't know who's next, right? You know, they get them off the table. So Dr. John Henry Clark used to tell us, we have no friends out here, you know. So, and the ones we have, they want something from you, and if they don't, that will show in time. We have to operate from the assumption that it's people in this room or in this place and people like us that are going to have to solve these problems from the ground up. And that's, I think, if we operate from that assumption and the assumption that our young people are the ones that are actually going to carry this out, if we orient them the right way, then I think we're onto something. So AES, it's called Alliance of Sahel States. You know, Sahel is the area that runs just kind of south of the Sahara Desert, going east and west, really from Chad really all the way to Senegal. So they're not all of the states in the Sahel, but they're 3 in the center. So we're going to see how all this works out. And then all of the other African countries, a lot of them are being asked to define themselves relative to this AES. So they, you know how it used to be. It's so what do you think about the AES, President so-and-so? Well, boss,
Boss.
So, and now a lot of people are getting on the hot seat because they got to figure out, you know, as the guy you all voted for, George Bush, said, are you with us or are you against us?
That's Bush.
All right. But anyway, that's part of what's going on. Long answer to a short question or something. Sister.